Do you want to become a talk show host? Do you have a great idea? Passionate World Talk Radio is currently looking for podcast hosts for our Internet Talk radio station. Please email us at pwrnetworkllc@gmail.com with your name, email address, cell phone number, and podcast topic. In return, you will receive a 3-minute intro on air to a live audience about your podcast. Remember, just email us your name, email address, and your podcast topic, and in return, you will receive a free 3-minute intro on the air. How cool is that? Welcome to Passionate World Talk Radio. Educate, enlighten, entertain.
This show does not provide medical advice. If you're having a medical emergency, please call 911. Anything you hear here should be discussed with your primary healthcare provider. Hello and welcome to Everyone Dies, the radio show produced by Passionate World Talk Radio, whose goal it is to educate, enlighten, and entertain. I'm Marianne Matzo, and for the next 30 minutes, I'm your host. Today we have a wonderful show planned for you. We have Dr. Lorilei Richardson, who has a PhD in gerontology from the University of Massachusetts, Boston, which is where I got my PhD in gerontology. Many, many years between the two of us. And we have William the Fifth. William, hello.
Hello.
Hey, thank you so much for coming on my show today. William is 5 years old, and Lorilei was telling me that he had questions about death. And so we let lots of different aged people come on the show and ask questions or talk about the things that are important to them. And why not a 5-year-old? Right, William?
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, I just love how agreeable you are. So you were asking just a little bit ago, I did talk to William a little bit ago, you were saying one of the first questions you had was why people die. Is that correct?
Yes.
So why do you think people die?
Well, the one reason that I already know, because the earth makes people get old, very old, and sometimes they die, and that makes more room for people to be born, or else the humans might get stacked up on each other.
That's true. I'm sorry, what?
There would be too many humans.
Yes, I got that. I thought I heard somebody else talking. So you're right about that, William. You're very smart. So one of the reasons that people die is because they're very, very old. Now, you might look at me or look at your grandparents. I don't know really how old your grandparents are, but you might say, oh, you're old. But there's a difference between being old and being very old and being very, very old. So, each year you have a birthday and you get older, right? But you're not very, very old. You're only 5. So it's what we're talking about in terms of age and why people die is that people are very, very old. So you're right about that. So what do you think do you have any other thoughts about why people die?
Yeah.
Do you remember why our dog died?
Know why my dog died?
Why did he die?
He was very sick before he died, and he had a sickness that makes him die. He had cancer.
That's right.
Oh, so he was very, very sick. And you're right. That's the second reason that there's death, is that people are very, very sick. Now, you can get a cold or you could hurt your arm, or lots of things can happen that make us sick. But for a lot of things, there's medicines or surgeries or other things that we can do so that we get better. But not everything can get cured. Not all of our medicines work. And that's true with cancer. Some cancers we can fix with surgery or medicine, and some of them we just can't. And like with your dog who had cancer, he was very, very sick. So not just regular sick, he was very, very sick. And when you know if somebody's very, very sick, you say, well, I don't know how much time that they have still with us, but let's have fun with them and let's have good days with them. And really, honestly, that's kind of a good way to live life anyway. Do you remember any other, or think of any other reasons that people would die?
No.
So we have very, very old, and we have very, very sick. And the third reason, there's only 3 of them, William. The third reason is that they're very, very hurt. So, like, if your dog had been hit by a car, God forbid, and he was very, very hurt, that would be a reason that he might die. Because, like I said, we can't fix everything. We can fix a lot. I'm a nurse, so I can tell you we can fix a lot, but we can't fix everything. And so that's the third reason. So very, very sick, very, very old, and very, very hurt. And if you remember those 3 reasons, you'll know why things die. People, plants, animals, anything. It's only those 3 reasons. Does that make sense to you, William V?
Yes, but there are other reasons, like sometimes they get killed by somebody else, like getting killed by a weapon. That would be very, very
Yes. So William V just told us sometimes they get killed by a weapon. And you're right, but that falls under the category of very, very hurt. So if somebody shoots somebody in a part of their body that they really need, like we really need our hearts, and we really need our lungs, and we really need our brain to tell the rest of our body what to do, they've been really, really hurt by that bullet. So, William, it's not how they get really, really hurt. It could be by anything, including a bullet. The bottom line, though, is that they're really, really hurt. What?
Including a knife, too.
A bite? Like what kind of bite?
Or a knife, he said.
Oh, or a knife. Yes, you're right. Any kind of...
Getting hurt.
That's right.
Just like a bayonet, it's just a big sword that can connect to the rifle, and they use it to hurt people.
Because we're always getting very hurt. That's right.
And it's that way.
So William V is telling us, like, if you have a bayonet that's attached to a rifle, that would definitely make you really, really hurt, William. And so, fortunately, we don't fight that way anymore, do we? Isn't that the old-timey way of having wars and fights with bayonets?
Yes.
Those are older wars.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like the Revolutionary War with the British will stay in that. Okay.
So talking about the American Revolution, William V lives up in Massachusetts, and so he's near a lot of the famous battlefields, like from the American Revolution and Civil War. So, have you been to see those places, William?
Yeah, I went to bunkers I went to Bleed Hill where they had Battle of Bunker Hill, but they were gonna have it on Bunker Hill, so they still called it the Battle of Bunker Hill. But anyways, they had it on Bleed Hill.
The Battle of Bunker Hill. And what's the reenactment they do in Concord every year?
Lexington and Concord, of course.
Yes, Battle. I've been to that one. I saw that one. Not the original, but the reenactment. What other questions about death or dying or sickness do you have, William?
We were just talking about how we talk about death and it makes us sad, and that's okay. And he said, that's right, but we don't talk about it at school. And the caveat there is that we sort of unfortunately had to censor because we got pulled into the principal's office at his school last year. It wasn't my first time sitting in that chair with a strong little child, but the principal said, William told his teacher that someday his heart's going to stop and he's going to die. And I don't know what movies you're watching at home. And I sort of laughed, and my instinct was to apologize. And I said, well, last night for a bedtime story, William chose a biologic encyclopedia, and we were reading about the functions of the heart and how our hearts beat when we're living, and that's one thing that stops beating when we die. It's a whole new life. And so he was wondering why we can't talk about it at school.
Well, I think that's a really good question, William. And I got to tell you that the reason that I'm talking to you and doing our radio show and our podcast is because people really don't like to talk about it, even though we're all going to die. Everybody dies at some point. Nobody lives forever. Nobody lives forever. And so for some people, they're scared of that because the question for many people is, well, what happens after I die? What do you think happens after we die, William?
Well, if it was actually a spooky time when the other people lived, like when there was the dinosaur time, some of the early humans lived, but some of them were just like real people living today.
And then what happens after you die? If it was a long time ago or if someone died today?
Well, if it was a long time ago, in that time, then it would actually be like real spooky life. Zombies, skeletons, ghosts.
What happens when someone dies now?
They just stay dead underground.
That's it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Do you think anything happens to their thoughts or their feelings, or is it just the body dies and that's the end of it?
Well, in the old time, it wasn't like that, but in the time today, then it was.
Lorilei, what is he saying in terms of in the old times it wasn't like that? I'm having trouble hearing him.
He's saying in the times of dinosaurs that there may have been people living, and he thinks that those people who died turned into spooky things like zombies.
Well,
turned into what?
Spooky things like zombies.
Well.
Oh, I see.
Then they would always be zombies. Then they would go back underground for 3 years. Then skeletons, 3 years again. Then ghosts.
I see.
That's how it would go in order.
And that's the order. Okay. Zombie. Skeleton.
So what did he say?
He said that people go underground and they become a zombie and then a skeleton and then a ghost. In the old times.
I see.
But now when you die, you just get buried.
So what changed between the old times and now, William?
It's that they don't turn into a spooky thing.
They just don't anymore.
Yeah, they just
Oh.
And why do we bury people?
It's because we want to have them remembered, but when they invented cemeteries, we couldn't leave them just on top of ground. People might steal them, so we put them underground instead to be remembered.
So we kind of hide them in the ground, don't we? Because we don't really, we really don't like to look at death or think about death or talk about death. And maybe it's going to be your job with your friends to be the person who sometimes does talk about it and say, well, we don't have to be scared about that. It's just everybody's going to do it. And so, let's do it really well. Let's live and be happy. And when our time comes to die, then, we say goodbye to people and be grateful for the lives that we've had and know that that's like the next thing that we do because everyone dies, right? Yeah.
People just pretend that and scare other people with spooky costumes that they bring in. So some people believe that.
That's very natural.
So some people are scary after they're dead?
He said some people just pretend to be dead.
And then they bring costumes when they get buried, and then they get out their grave, and then they dress up in one of those spooky costumes first. So some people believe this still happens.
But we know that's not true, that they don't come out from under the ground to scare us, and that there aren't zombies, thank goodness. It just makes a good movie and makes a good scary movie because we like to be scared, right? Yeah. But you got to ask your mom, but I think it's normal to say that everyone dies, and that's just a fact of life. Everybody's born and everyone dies, and now you know the 3 reasons why they die, and that's not scary. That's just the way it is, right? It's like, why is the sky blue, or why are trees green? It's like, well, we can tell you why trees are green, and
I always know why the sky's blue. I can tell you it's because there are little
okay.
that are many different colors, but many of the colors don't bump into. Many of those colors breaking through the sky don't bump into the other molecules, but only the blue ones did, and spread blue around the sky.
Ah. You're a pretty smart person for being so young, aren't you?
I learned that from Storybots, of course.
You learned that from where?
Storybot, just a show.
On Netflix.
Oh, I see. Those shows can be really good. You can learn a lot in them. So, William V, do you have any other questions that you were wondering about in terms of death and dying?
Yeah, like why do people die when they get hurt or really hurt or old?
So why does that make them die?
Yes.
Oh. Well, because remember a few minutes ago I told you there's some things that we absolutely need in order to be alive. We absolutely need our hearts, and we absolutely need like our brain stem, the part by your spine at the top there, and we absolutely need our lungs. And so when any of those really stop working, your body just can't keep going on. It's like if you had a car and the engine stopped working, well, you'd still have the car, right? But you couldn't get anywhere because the engine won't work to make, the belts turn and the wheels turn and everything else. So it's our bodies are like a car. We have all different parts. Some of the parts they can replace, like if somebody hurts their knee, they can put in a new knee. Or if somebody hurts their hip, they can put in a new hip. Sometimes they're able to take lungs out of somebody who's died, who got very, very hurt and died, and they can take those lungs, it's called organ donation, and give them to somebody else whose lungs are really, really broken. But not everybody donates their organs, and not everybody can donate their organs. So sometimes if our hearts or lungs are just not working, then there's no way that we can replace those parts, and we're going to die. Now the brain, we don't ever donate our brains except to, for science, if they want to look at it and learn about it. They don't transplant people's brains because it's far too complex and we haven't learned how to do that. So the reason you die when you're very, very old or very, very hurt or very, very sick is because those organs inside your body that you need in order to be alive don't work anymore. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, if we could figure out a way to change all of the parts in our body, get new ones for everything like we can for hips and knees, well, that might be a whole different story. But we haven't figured that part out yet. Plus, we don't know where we would get all the spare parts because we don't have that many people donating. We'd have to maybe make them out of something else. So there's a lot that goes on to that whole idea. But until we can change out the parts like we can in a car, those reasons are going to be the reasons that we're going to die, because those are the reasons that make our parts not work. Do you have other questions?
I don't know.
What your question?
Maybe that's all my questions.
So, Lorilei, it sounds like you and your husband have talked about death with William V before he and I chatted today. Have you had somebody in your family die where you've needed to talk with him about it?
It's part of our parenting philosophy, I guess, to just sort of be open about things like that, about death, about where babies come from. These things aren't secrets. And it's the model of driver's ed, right? We teach driver's ed, we teach how to drive, we teach what to do if you get in an accident or how to avoid an accident, but learning how to drive in driver's ed does not cause car accidents, right? So talking about death, talking about where babies come from does not cause death. It does not cause teen pregnancies. So since he was around 1 year old when our dog died, and my husband's father died when he was a teenager. So we wanted his memory and his story to be part of our son's life. So we've always talked about Grandpa and the wonderful things he did and how he died and how he's not with us anymore, and how it's sad, but it's important to remember these people who are integral in our lives. And so he's always sort of, and again, living in the heart of the Revolutionary War in Massachusetts, and history just surrounding us, and my husband being in the military, he's engrossed in this military history, and death is unfortunately really a part of war that is unavoidable when you're learning about the facts, but we've welcomed that as part of the story.
Yeah, That's excellent. I did the same thing when my kids were growing up. They're 23 and 24 now. And when my youngest was, pre-K, kindergarten, I picked her up after school, and I needed a colleague of mine's mother had died. And I said to the girl, I guess I must have had both girls because I don't know where the other one would have been. But I remember Juliana, talked about, okay, here's what you're going to see. Here's what's going to happen. There may be people that are really sad. Here's, she was really, really old, and that's why she died. So we talked all about it before the funeral. We got to the funeral home, went in the funeral home, offered our condolences, went and said a prayer at the casket. And then Julie kind of looked around the room, and across the hallway there was another casket. And she said, so who's that over there? I said, I don't know. Do you want to go see? And she said, yeah. So we walked across the hall. There were no visitors there. It was just this elder woman in the casket. And we said a prayer for her. And, you'd have to know Juliana, but, she checked out the fingernail polish, the makeup, the outfit. And there was a picture there of the woman wearing the outfit when she was alive. And so we speculated about her and talked about her and, wished her well in her next life. And then we left. And when I told, my friends about it, they're like, you're insane. It's like, why? She asked about the woman. What am I supposed to say? Oh, we can't talk about that? Well, of course not. Let's normalize it for our children. This is what happens. We're sad about it, and we don't know what happens afterwards, but it's just a fact of life. And so I love your approach with William V. He sounds like a wonderful kid.
Thank you. To your point about that taboo, it makes it very hard to sort of censor, like I was saying at school. And then also we might not always be doing the best job because there aren't a lot of resources out there about how to talk to your kids about everyday death. I guess there are some instances if someone in the family dies, but the example that comes to mind is when William was 3, we were volunteering to put flags out on the graves of veterans for Memorial Day. And we were talking about, how Memorial Day is for veterans who have died and Veterans Day is to celebrate all veterans. And so as we're doing this, he walked up to the gentleman who was heading the volunteer effort, and he said, excuse me, are you a dead veteran or an alive veteran? So we sort of reel that back a little bit and sort of think about how we're talking about people who died, because we say, they're always with us because we're talking about them and remembering them, but the physical spirit versus the ethereal spirit, I guess, are two different things. It's probably hard for a 3-year-old to really grasp, but so I wish there were more resources, and I do wish it was normalized and we didn't have to say, oh, but don't say this at school, because what kind of message is that sending? It's just sort of undoing everything that we're trying to do by talking about it and learning about it together.
Well, but he has the correct information. Here's what I would say as a parent. If he's getting the correct information that everyone dies and here's why it happens, and the school has a problem with that, I would, as a parent, I'm sure the school's like, well, my kids aren't in them anymore, but as a parent, I would say this is a real problem because it's a simple fact of life. And these kids are going to have pets, goldfish, grandparents, maybe parents. They're going to experience it. And if you don't prep them for that, it's going to be so much more traumatic. Right. So I, personally would say the need to figure out a way to educate the kids. And I'll send you a copy of our book, and we'll put in the link for resources, because that's what we did. Is like, you know, from all my years working in nursing and in palliative care, is that people don't know a way to communicate why people die, you know, a simple way about why people die without really muddling up all the facts about going to heaven and going to sleep and all the other things that just can scare children.
Right.
So, so that's what our work is about, and that's what our podcasts are about. And for years, my kids were both C-sections because my first one was a breech, and for years we had the picture of Juliana, on the refrigerator when they pulled her right out, just like, you know, covered with vernix and whatever. And her friends would come over, and they would spend a lot of time looking at that picture and discussing it. And I would just kind of say, oh, God, I'm waiting for the phone call on this one, you know.
We're that family too.
But you know, reality is reality, and let's not hide from it.
Absolutely.
Well, Lorilei and William, thank you so much for being my guests this week. And William, I'm going to send you a book, so you look for a book in your mailbox. And for our listeners, go to our link, and you can purchase it there. You can purchase it on Amazon. You can purchase it at Barnes & Noble. It's called Everyone Dies, and it's easy to find which one's the children's book. So thank you for spending time with me during our show, Everyone Dies. You can read our blogs and listen to our other podcasts at everyonedies.org. That's EBERY, the number 1, DIES.org. Thank you to our producer, Jeannie White, and our CEO, Lillian Caldwell. We produce a new show every Wednesday to answer questions related to life-threatening illness, dying, and death. Remember, you can listen to Passionate World Talk Radio on Spreaker and our shows wherever you listen to podcasts. If you have a topic you'd like to discuss on our show, please email me, Marianne, at everyonedies.org. That's MARIANNE at EBERY, the number 1, dies.org. I hope that you live your best life every day. And remember, every day is a gift. Thank you for listening.
Do you want to become a talk show host? Do you have a great idea? Passionate World Talk Radio is currently looking for podcast hosts for our Internet Talk radio station. Please email us at pwrnetworkllc@gmail.com with your name, email address, cell phone number, and podcast topic. In return, you will receive a 3-minute intro on air to a live audience about your podcast. Remember, just email us your name, email address, and your podcast topic, and in return, you will receive a free 3-minute intro on the air. How cool is that? Thank you for listening to Passionate World Talk Radio. You can listen to this program all over again by going over to https://passionateworldtalkradio.com. You can also hear it on Spotify, Spreaker, Amazon Alexa, AMFM247.com every Tuesday evening between 8 and 9 p.m. YouTube, Facebook Live, LinkedIn, and all the other podcast directories one can find on the Internet.